Hey guys, so today I'm going to go through quickly how you can pre-grade your cards to send off to PSA in order to try and get a PSA 10 on your cards that you would potentially like to invest in and hold for the long term. This is going to be a quick guide to show you what you can do in order to make sure that the card you're sending has the best chance of getting a PSA 10. Now, I'm not guaranteeing you that you will get a PSA 10. However, if you take some of these steps that I have personally taken in order to try and make sure that my cards get a PSA 10, then this guide will be very, very helpful. Even if you decide not to grade your cards, but you want to keep them raw,
Oh yeah!
minty,
Nice.
then these are some really, really good tips on what you should be doing and how you should be storing your cards in order to protect them.
Yeah, boy.
What I also need to just tell you is that PSA look at a bunch of different things in order to make sure that they grade your card correctly. Now, some of those obvious things are centering, which I'll get into later. The next thing is the edges, the corners. They will also look at surface, which is super important at PSA. And then they look at the overall card appeal. So how appealing is the card to the eye?
Oh my god!
So guys, some of the tools I like to use are what you saw in the intro. This thing here is not super important, but it's good if you can get it. This is a pro grade card centering tool. This kind of gives you an idea of how well centered a card is, because centering is super, super important. I'll try and leave links in the description for all of these products. By the way, I'm not sponsored by them or anything else. Another thing that you could get, that I'd highly recommend getting, is a 30 times magnification jeweler's loop. Okay, so this is what's used to zoom in onto the cards. I'll explain later why. These cost anywhere between $5 and $10, £5 to £10 on eBay. Another very, very important thing is sleeves. Okay, penny sleeves. These are cheap enough. I mean, it's in the name, they're penny sleeves. You need top loaders. Okay, these are like great fit ones, but I normally get Ultra Pro, Voltex, a bunch of them. By the way, if you do want Voltex stuff, there is a coupon code for 10% in my description and in my bio. You can get these sticky tapes. I'll tell you why these are important. And finally, you can get these, which are basically PSA slab protectors, and I'll show you these in a minute. So guys, the first topic we will discuss is centering. Okay, we've got a basic energy card here. Okay, now the reason centering is so important is you can see on this card here that the border on the left hand side is significantly thicker than the right hand side. Okay, so what PSA do, or most grading companies do, is they look at the centering to see how well a card is centered. Now if you turn it over as well, again, it's the same thing. You should have the centering to be off. So you'll see on the left hand side, the blue border is a lot thinner than the right side. So they look from top to bottom and right to left or left to right. And what they'll do is that they'll grade it. So part of the grading process is to see how well a card is centered. Now, if we were to compare that to another card, like this Eevee, for example, okay, you can see very clearly here that the card is much better centered than the energy card previously on the front and the back. The reason why I showed you the pro grade card centering tool is because you can use one of these, okay, and you can actually place it on top of a card. Okay, there's plenty of videos online about how to use these, but it gives you, once you place it on the card, it gives you a really good indication of how well your card is centered. To be honest with you, I've got this, but I hardly ever use it. I generally go by eye. I just go off of basically what I can see from my eye center, unless the centering is super off. Now, in some cases, some cards are actually worth grading which are off center, and I'll give you an example of that. And a prime example of that is something like my Mew from Fusion Strike. I'm sure some of you have seen this on my previous videos. Now, this card here, I purposely had graded because I knew it would get a 9. OC is a qualifier, so that stands for off center, okay, or off cut. And there is a market for off-cut cards. There are actually collectors that actually really like collecting off-cut or off-center cards. You can see how thick the border is here on the right. If I flip it over, you can actually see the white dots. Can you see that white dot there? That white dot there is where the card should have originally been cut, but you can see how far off center this card is. And actually a 9OC is the highest grade you can get in an off-center card. So in some cases it is worth grading, but for example, if you had a normal card like this and the centering was this far off, it wouldn't be worth grading. Now another thing that's really, really important is whenever you do get a card, is to get yourself some penny sleeves. And these cost next to nothing, okay? And what you do is you get in the sleeve and you put it in there, just like that. So the reason why this is important is because we want to protect the surface front and back, okay? We want to protect the edges and we want to protect the corners. Now another thing that is very, very important, and when you're trying to grade a card to look out for, is the edges of the card. Now if the edges are muffled and have like whitening on it, you don't want to grade that card. Now for example, this card here, you can see the edges are pretty good, okay? I'll show you an example of a card which isn't. There's no white dots on here and here, okay? So if there's anything on the surface, although on this card, if you look very carefully here, can you see there's a line there? So that would cause a problem when grading, and that would automatically knock off some points. So that's what you want to prevent, and the way you prevent that is you get a sleeve, you put the card in the sleeve, and then you get a semi-rigid like this one, okay? And you place the card in the sleeve. But before you do that, you put it there, okay? And then what you do is you can turn it over. Now this step is not important for PSA. It is not important, okay? And what you can do is you can get one of these sticky labels, okay? Peel it off. Place it on the back of the card, like so. And then slide your card into your card saver. Okay, now in the future, if you want to get that card out, it's very simple. You literally put your thumb on the tab and you pull and the card comes out nice and easy. This is not required for PSA. This tab here is not required for PSA. Now another thing that's really, really important also that a lot of people miss, for example, are print lines. So I'm going to give you an example of where print lines can actually detract from the card's overall eye appeal. And I don't know if you can see it on here, but there is a print line that runs all the way across this card from top to bottom. Okay, all the way from top to bottom. The reason why I actually gave you the suggestion to get the jeweler's loop is this. Some things can't be seen with the naked eye. So when you get one of these, let me give you an example. I'm just trying my best to try and see if I can show you. But this allows you to really zoom in on a card and see the surface, and to work out if there are any issues with the card, okay? It's another great tool to use as well to check if a card is genuine. So you guys know about the rosette pattern, right? So on the back of a card, the print quality looks like tiny little roses. Don't know if you can pick it up on the camera. But anybody who's concerned about fake Pokemon cards, get yourself one of these. I'll do a little zoomed in image of what the rosette pattern looks like on a card. This is also great for checking edges, okay? Because this will allow you to zoom in on an edge and actually see if it's nicked, if there's any issues with the edges whatsoever. That's obviously got some whitening there. Okay, so that would not grade a 10. You can check all the corners and edges like this, okay? And that will give you a really good indication. Again, centering, so not every card will grade a 10. This will not grade a 10. Highly unlikely, because look at the right side is thinner than the left side. This is obviously in a rigid. Here's another example of a card where the surface is really, really important. So I pulled this on the UPC opening on my previous video. And if you look at the bottom of the card here, There's some damage on the card. Flip it over. You can actually see it just down here. I'm not sure if the camera picks it up, but can you see that? Yeah, that damage right there would mean that that would not get a 10. So as much as I'd like this to be a 10, it just won't get one. And then you can use the loop again on there to just double check how bad the edge wear is on the card. Let me see if I can focus in on it. There we go. Can you see the whitening there? Okay. And you can also see print lines of this. As I said before, this really lets you zoom in super close into the card to see if there's any damage, any dirt, anything whatsoever. And this one actually is not very well centered either. And here's another example. I'd love for this card to be a PSA 10, but this is highly unlikely to get a 10, and I'll tell you why. If you look at the top edge there, you can see some whitening right there. Can you see it? It's chipped in two places. So again, by the naked eye, it might look really nice and perfect, but actually it's unlikely that this would grade a 10. So now let me give you an example of what a 10 does look like. Okay, like I said, this one is, the centering isn't absolutely perfect, but it's pretty close. Okay, so this is a 10 that came back from my recent submission. Okay, you can see this here, the edges, they're all perfect. There's no damage, no whitening to either side, and it's flawless. So the surface will have no damage to it like on the EV, like I showed you earlier. Okay, the surface had that print line across, well, not the print line, but that line across there. Okay, this one doesn't have that at all. The edges are perfect along the sides, front and back. There's no white little nicks on the top corners like this, for example. Where was the one with the nick? Let me show you another example. This one here. See a little white nick up there. Okay, that wouldn't grade a 10. But for it to be a 10, it needs to be perfectly centered or well centered. There is a tolerance there for 60%, 60-40, left to right, top to bottom. You check the surface. Make sure you penny sleeve it, put it in a semi-rigid or a top loader. Inspect it with the eyeglass if you can. And then that's it. Bob's your uncle. So guys, I hope that made sense. The really important thing is that you can get all the tools, but obviously if you're not looking for the right things, you're not going to be able to grade your cards properly. So make sure that they're centered well. Get the centering tool if you need. There's videos on YouTube on how to use it. Make sure that you check all the corners for little white nicks. Check the edges for any whitening. Check the surface for stuff like print lines. There'll be lines running across horizontally and vertically on the cards. And then also just check the surface. Like the EV card I showed you had that line on it. I didn't initially see that, but that's actually stuff that will get picked up in the grading process. Get it into a top loader and in a semi-rigid, just like this. And this is how you would submit the card normally to PSA or any other grading service. If you have any other questions, guys, on how to do this, I tried my best to try and do this on my stand with the phone and with the light, etc. Obviously, not everything will be visible on camera. I'll try my best to zoom in and show you guys what I mean by some of these things. But if you have any other questions or you want to learn more, let me know. Drop a comment down below. And if you enjoyed this kind of content, I'm just your average normal collector, okay? I do sell stuff online. I do have some sort of interest in that space. However, it doesn't benefit me in any other way other than to teach you guys, because I see some things happening. I bought cards on eBay where they've literally put the card into a top loader. No sleeve, nothing, and it's turned up with scratches on it. So I'm just giving you guys some advice on what to do to best maximize your potential of getting a PSA 10. If you like this video, guys, do please subscribe down below. Let me know what your thoughts are and what else you want to see. I'll catch you on the next one. Bye-bye.